What's happening? MC Marcus Chapman here, ready to break down show number 8 in the MC25. This show was done November 22nd, 2003, and it's called What Rappers Need to Stop Acting. All right. Now, this is not an important show in the history of my career. It's not like shows at numbers 9, 10, and 11, but it's definitely one of the shows that gives an example of something that I took pride in, which was being able to take something that the radio station did and flip it and turn it into something creative for people to participate in. So in this case, we were doing a weekend giveaway for tickets to the big concert that the station was having. But then another giveaway was also passes to the Tupac Resurrection movie. It was just coming out, and I used that to kind of play out the fact that Tupac, even though he was a rapper, he was also a successful actor. He did a pretty good job acting. Matter of fact, there is an unsung Hollywood episode about Tupac's acting career that will be airing October 29th, 2017. It's a Sunday night. And I'm in that episode. I actually filmed my parts for it back in December of 2016 out in Hollywood, Burbank, out that way. And so it kind of ties in with this almost. So at the time when the Tupac Resurrection movie was coming out, a lot of rappers by that point had been acting in movies. Ice-T, Ice Cube, they were the ones who really kind of started it. You had Queen Latifah, Will Smith, LL Cool J. Those were probably the 5 major ones aside from Tupac. But you also had, by this point in the early 2000s, a lot of rappers kind of going to the acting game or being invited into acting, because it wasn't like they just did it on their own. A lot of the Hollywood studios saw rappers as like a way to get another audience. It's kind of like how, an aficionado of the black films of the 1970s. And in the 70s, a lot of the movie companies, they used athletes, particularly football players. Jim Brown, Fred Williamson, Bernie Casey, those guys were all former football players. And then you had other athletes as well who were participating in movies and starring in movies. Well, in the 90s and 2000s, the studios were using rappers to act in the movies. DMX, Ludacris, Ja Rule, everybody got into the acting game. And some of them were very good at it. But on the other hand, some of them were not. And that was the topic of discussion on this show in the 99 Countdown. This was a Saturday night 6 to 10 show. And in the 99 Countdown, I used that as the chance to have people call and say what rappers they felt should just stop acting, because some of them were just terrible. Like I said in the clip on the show, it was kind of the trendy thing to do, to rap and act at the same time. A lot of them were doing it. Some of them were good, some were not. And so people started calling in when I introduced the topic right before 9 o'clock. And what was interesting to me, and I didn't really realize this at the time, but when I went back and listened to it a few times, a lot of the rappers who people mentioned were actually some of the best ones. Somebody mentioned Will Smith, somebody mentioned Ice-T, somebody mentioned Ice Cube, Queen Latifah. All the major ones except for LL Cool J got mentioned as DMX. He was pretty good. But people mention these folks as rappers they felt should stop acting. And then some of them were just really hilarious, And it was a really hot topic. Matter of fact, it was one of the hottest ones I've had, because the phone lines were just blowing up so much on this topic. I mean, it was so many calls, I couldn't even get to them all. Years later, the station had a text messaging service, but they didn't have all that. Texting was not that big at this point. And very few people were doing that. Some people had two-way pages where they were sending messages, but that was starting to kind of go out. And regular cell phone texting was becoming a thing, but it wasn't major just yet. So the station, the only way for people to communicate with me was through the phone lines, and it was so many calls I couldn't even answer them all. Even the ones I did answer, I couldn't air all the ones I wanted to. Matter of fact, the phone lines were so hot that some people started calling the WGCI AM station, Gospel Radio 1390. I think it was two guys hosting the show. They were on the air at the same time I was. One of them name was Angel. I don't remember if that was his on-air name or not. But I remember him running into the studio. He was like, dude, you got to tell people to not call us. They calling our phone number trying to reach you. And I'm like, really? I'm like, what makes them think they're going to reach me by calling the AM station? It was a totally different phone number. But that's how bad people wanted to discuss and say what rappers they felt needed to stop acting. And it was really a funny show. I wish I could have had the topic go on even longer, to get more calls in. Most of the calls are short and people just pretty much said what they had to say, and it was during the countdown. So it wasn't like a whole lot of time to discuss it. But yeah, it was definitely a hot topic, and the phone lines were blowing up. That's one of the reasons why it's one of the most memorable shows I ever did, because it was funny, and people just took it and ran with it. And that's one of the things that I kind of pride myself on as a personality, is being a person who provided a platform for the audience to say what they had to say. Yeah, I could say what I had to say, but if you listen to the clip of the show, you don't hear me saying any particular rappers that needed to stop acting. I let the audience say it. I didn't even give any suggestions or anything like that, but I knew that there was some who it was just like, nah, this ain't your lane right here. You need to stick to rapping, and it was a funny thing. And it's interesting because it only took up 1 hour of the show. Like, this whole clip, the first, say, 15 minutes or so, covers the first 3 hours of the show. And I mentioned it a few times that we were going to be talking about where rappers should stop acting. But I had other things going on the show. The first hour I had the GCI quick hit where I played a little piece of the song and somebody had to guess it to get the answer right. And it was Jagged Edge, Walked Out of Heaven. I was actually in the Jagged Edge Unsung episode earlier this summer. And the second I had to check in, just people calling to check in, say where they were at in the city. It was just a little Saturday night thing. It wasn't nothing major. Then at 8 o'clock, we had the mix going on. I believe DJ Lil Jon did the mix in this show. And then after that, I did a couple of giveaways prior to 9 o'clock, but then it was like, in the 99 countdown, get your chance to win, pass to the concert, and passes to the Tupac Resurrection movie. And it was like, what rappers need to stop acting. So people just called and had a good time with it. And I'm proud of the fact that I was just able to give them a platform. So this isn't like a serious show by any means. There's some more meaningful topics that are yet to come in the top 10 of the MC25. So this one isn't like something, no big deal, but just the fact that I was able to take what the station had and flip it. And it wasn't the first time I did that. I did that many times. Matter of fact, a couple of shows in the MC25 do that. Is Gospel Going Too Far from 1998. I believe that's number 20. That's one. I mean, so I did it many times, but this one is the one where it really stands out. The other thing, two other things that stand out about this show is how Alicia Keys' You Don't Know My Name, that was like a hot record at the time. And the part where it kind of breaks down and she's like, let me call this boy. She's like, hello, can I speak to her? Then she don't say nothing. And then I put my name, Marcus. That was the second song that I had ever done that with. The first one was back in 1998 with Brandy and Monica, The Boy Is Mine. If you hear some clips from the shows in 98, you will hear that in there, including the one at number 9, Does MC Matter, aka The Breakthrough, that I did with Dr. Love. I did that very early in the show. So this was like the new version of that 5 years later, and it came up like 3 times in the show. It came up in the regular part of the show. It was a song in the 99 countdown. And then it was actually scheduled to play after my show was over, but before the mix show came on. Tifa was the host of the mix show. And a lot of times they would have one song program coming out of the commercial break before the mixes started, just in case she needed some time to get set up or whatever. So that was the extra song that night. So I ended up playing it again, and that ends the clip. The other thing, the only reason why I don't like this show, I mean, I like the show, but the only thing I don't like is the fact that I was talking a little bit too fast. And I'm going to address that a little bit later in another clip. But most of the shows from 2003 and early '04 sound like that. You know, my content is great, but I was talking a little bit too fast. Matter of fact, the playlist on YouTube says, you know, great content, but talking too fast for WGCI Chicago 2003. So that's the only negative. But once you get past that, you know, and that energy just came from that time I was on and a few other things that were happening. So that's the only negative. My delivery could have been a little bit slower, but you know, overall, it's still a hot show. It's a hot show, and it stands out. So it comes in at number 8 in the MC25. What rappers need to stop acting? Who do you think? What rappers you think need to stop acting? You could ask that question forever as long as they keep acting in the movies. All right. This was November 22nd, 2003 on WGCI in Chicago. Coming up next at number 7 is a show from 5 years earlier that is absolutely one of my favorites. Matter of fact, if it was a countdown of my favorite shows, it might be number 1. I may have listened to it more than any other one that I've ever done, and for a totally different reason, though. So that'll be coming up at number 7. But for right now, number 8, November 22nd, 2003, what rappers need to stop acting? Which ones? MC Marcus Chapman on WGCI 107.5 in Chicago back in the day. The MC25, counting down the most significant show, the shows I feel best represent what I brought to the radio game. This one is number 8. Check it out.